Hey guys, it's Lisa. Listen with Are You My Cousin? And it's time for another Thursday Facebook Live. I am so excited to have you here today. It is January 9th already. I can't believe we are this far into January already. It's kind of I don't know. I don't know if anybody else is having a hard time kind of getting their legs back up under them, their research up under legs under them after the holidays. The holidays seem to have really I can't quite seem to get back into my regular routine, but I'm almost there. Got the last child off to college and back to school, and I think I'm really ready to settle into my winter of research. So as you're coming in, if you don't mind just giving me a quick thumbs up or hello, that just lets me know that you can see and hear and everything's working well. So I am super excited to be here today. We are going to be talking about one of my favorite tips or subjects, and that is of our female ancestors. Now, before we get too far into talking about those extra tips for those female ancestors, I would love, just want to give you a heads up. If you are on the YouTube, if you're watching this as a replay on YouTube, know that any links that I mention are going to be in the description below. If you are watching on Facebook, it's going to be in the comments, obviously. So just to let you know that that'll be there. Also, I'm excited to tell you, I know it's been such a hectic time through the holidays and getting my family back where they needed to be this January. But somewhere in all that, guys, I started writing another book. So I'm not going to tell you quite yet what it is. I'm still kind of working and fleshing it all out, but I'm really excited to be writing another book. Who knew? I just love to write. My English teachers would probably be appalled if they heard that from high school because I really didn't like to write back then, but now I've really come to love it. Hey, Alicia. Oh, thank you so much for giving me a hello, and that tells me that we are working. Everything's working tech-wise. Yay. You never quite know. Okay, so today's post, the newest post on the website has to do with finding female ancestors. I'm going to go ahead and pop that into the chat box so you guys can see that. That'll be on the comments. And as I talk a little bit about some tips, and these are going to be, I want to share tips that are not necessarily tips that were in the post or that I've written about before. These are, since the post is, I wrote the post, people have given me some new ideas, and I really wanted to kind of share with that. I also want you to, if you are listening and have an unusual place or some place that you think would be helpful to other researchers to hear where you have found a female ancestor or found a vital clue to a female ancestor, go ahead and drop it in the comments below. I'd love to be able to share that and work with folks. You guys know I love to think kind of outside of the box and get beyond the traditional records. And honestly, that's what we have to do when we're reaching our female ancestors. We can certainly use the regular records that we have, but we have to get outside of the box. We have to think a little further out. We need to dig deeper, and really it's a lot of work sometimes, but that's okay, because I think for me that's where the fun is in the research. I'm fascinated by the women in my family tree, and I am just adamant about sharing their stories. I just think it's such an important part of family history that doesn't get shared because it is a little harder, and I want to make sure that their stories are told. So with that, let's start talking a little bit about some of those other places that you might find records. One of the things I want you to think about when you are looking at your female ancestor, we're so focused on finding things like birth, marriage, death records. We're so focused on finding that marriage record because hopefully it's going to have that maiden name on it, right? That's why we're going after that. We're going to get a date. And if we're really lucky, we might find the father, the bride's father mentioned, or parents or brother or somebody mentioned. But here's something I want you to consider. Did they actually get married? Now, this is not a normal case. I mean, this would be the unusual, but the unusual happens. And I think that we as researchers see enough of the unusual when we're researching to pay attention to that. So let me give you just a quick example on this. So one of my third great grandparents, his name was Langley Talbot. Her name was Sarah Blanks. At least that's sort of what I thought it was. And another researcher had found things. He's like, but Lisa, I think I found him with another woman years later, but Sarah was still living. So I don't know if he said, I don't know what's going on. I don't know if there was a divorce. I don't know what's going on here. Well, I'm going to fast forward and save you a lot of years of research and knowledge there. it turns out that Sarah and Langley never married. Now, Sarah was frequently referred to in census records and other records as Sarah Talbot, but she was never Sarah Talbot. She was never married to Langley. They had children. They had a number of children. The children had his name. So they essentially had a common law marriage. But as it turns out, she was rather smart, hopefully, in the fact that he had a gambling problem and she was not willing to marry him and give up her property to him because of his gambling problem. Now, as it turns out, she wasn't even Sarah Blanks to begin with. That was a married name from a first marriage. So you can see how this got very tangled very quickly, and I couldn't figure out who the heck she was for so long. I did eventually, a couple years ago, make that breakthrough where I learned that her maiden name was Tally, and so at least I now have her maiden name. But again, all of this is because, yes, Blanks was a married name, but it wasn't the marriage name to my ancestor, and they never got married, but they certainly functioned as a married couple. Kind of crazy, but we all settled it down. Now, I want you to think about this for a second. They never married. The records that solved the issue were created in the 1870s. They were together as early as the 1820s. So you've got about 50 years there where they're acting as a family, and there's nothing to tell me that they weren't married until I got to those later records. So at least consider that possibility when you're searching, and maybe it's worth exploring if you're stuck and can't find anything else. But don't be afraid to go further in the future to find the records. Okay. Now, on the Facebook page, someone had mentioned about children's death records. I did have a post where on the website about using the children's records to find the names of the parents, particularly the mother. And when I talk about children's record, I don't just mean children as little children or minor children. I mean, it could be adult children as well. And she had mentioned, I didn't write her down. I thought I had. Anyway, so the woman Julie, her name was Julie. Julie reported that she had discovered an ancestor's maiden name on the children's death certificates. And absolutely, that was a great place for her to go and look for those. Now, she went on to say the woman had about 10 children, and every single death certificate had a different spelling. And she was desperate to try to figure out which was the right spelling. Well, I'm going to probably say none of them were the right ones, and every one of them was the right spelling. As we know, spelling really was not consistent and standardized really until well into the 1900s. So if you are new to genealogy research, you may not be as familiar with that. And those of us who have researched quite a while understand that name spelling can be quite varied. And that's okay. As long as you can match up the data and make sure you've got the same person, don't get too hung up on if the name is quote unquote misspelled. Because a lot of times they just weren't standardized. In my own personal family research, it was not until my great-grandfather, and this was in the early, I'd say 1920s, did his name become very standardized, and he went by the same name, same surname, the Howard surname, through the rest of his adult years. As a child, his surname was Harwood at times. His father bounced back and forth between Howard and Harwood. I never knew. I just had to look for multiple names and multiple spellings for that name. So don't be worried about that. I know that sort of trips newer researchers up. It's okay. You just have to trust me on that one. Okay. If you are just coming in, welcome. I'm so glad you are joining us. We are talking about some just kind of different types of tips to find our female ancestors. If you didn't hear at the top of the show, if you have an unusual place or record that you have found for your female ancestors, maybe you found them listed in an unusual county record, or maybe it was a private personal record within the family, go ahead and drop it in the comments, because I'd love to hear some of those unusual things that you guys are finding. I think that's how we help each other explore. We get new ideas, and it also gives us ideas for how to think forward and think outside of the box. Okay, Claudia had written something kind of interesting on the Facebook group as well. She was trying to find her third great grandparents, and or her third great grandmother, and she didn't know her name, but she knows actually that she was born in 1789. She knows when she died. Now, this is an interesting thing. When you know a birth year, you can sort of, with females, the first thing I do is I'm probably go ahead and add 20 years to it. So 1789, let's go to 1809. And I'm going to say, okay, she probably got married around that. It's just a place to start looking. And then I'll widen that time period out. I'll go earlier, I'll go later if I need to. But what I would recommend at this point is using what I call wildcard searches. And I will drop that link into the comment section in just a moment. So I would, if you know the surname of the husband or you know the husband's name, I would look for all males with that surname, or you can use the whole first name if you're sure you know who the full name is. And then I would look for male surname, all males of a certain surname. So maybe Smith, all males born at around a certain time period named Smith. And then I would look for marrying any female. And so then I would look to see what came up. And from the list of females, then I might start to explore those candidates and see who might have been born at the right time. Would she have fit the right time period? And try to backdoor myself into finding out if there's a marriage there somewhere, if I can make any possible connection. Maybe the couple that I find, I'm thinking, oh, but they live 50 miles apart. Well, I probably don't have the right people. But maybe I discover a woman with a similar name and she lived next door to the groom. So then I might explore that a little bit more and start digging into both of those families to find any possible connection. So this is using a wildcard search. So when you do a wildcard search, a lot of times you're not necessarily using an entire name, or you're leaving out whole search fields completely. And it's very valuable in your research, particularly for females. So that's actually what I would probably start when I have just that little bit of information. When I know it's a female, I know birth date, death date, if I know the groom, if I know the location, that's enough for me to start doing wildcard research. So let me go ahead and drop that real quick while I'm thinking about it, because I don't want to forget about it. Let me drop that link into the group for you. And you guys can see that. I really kind of stayed away from wildcard searches for a long time, guys, because I didn't really understand how to make the best use of them. And I would get back so many searches or results that it was like, oh, okay, I'm just overwhelmed. I really don't think I can really sift through all this. And I just didn't feel as confident or comfortable using those wildcard searches. So I would actually encourage you guys to try those out and check out that article and just experiment. Sometimes it's really helpful to your research not to research for anybody in particular, but to just play around with the parameters of a certain tool or a certain type of search to get a good feel for it. And then you can move forward with that. Wildcard searches are very helpful with females. At least that's what I'm finding these days. Okay. Another really great thing, Dawn, in our Facebook group, because I have the Are You My Cousin Genealogy Facebook group, and that's a free Facebook group, guys. We all, where we can sit and chat and ask questions about different things. Well, Dawn shared a really great article that was written over on the Legacy Tree blog about finding funeral home records and using funeral home records. Now, these are actually a great source, or can be a very good source for female ancestors, because it's going to give similar information to maybe what might be found on a death certificate. But now think about it. Death certificates are fairly modern. Again, in North Carolina, we didn't even start using death certificates until 1913. So if you have funeral home records prior to that, and I actually have seen a few, not a ton from that early, but I have seen a few, they can be very helpful in finding that, because they'll list, the deceased, they list the family members, they list spouses, with maiden names, they list parents, including mothers with maiden names. They list more information than what you would find on that death certificate, and that can be very helpful. Now, when you're looking for those funeral home records, one of the things to think about is that sometimes what they're doing is pulling the information from, say, the death certificate. Not everybody given that death certificate or information or funeral home information is a family member. So you need to make sure you understand who is providing the information, and do they actually have knowledge of the family, and can they speak knowledgeably of the family? That's an important piece of it. But Don shared that, and I thought that was such a good piece, because it is definitely not in our normal toolbox. Our genealogy toolbox is not a normal record we go after, but it can certainly be worth the effort. So when you are stuck on that female ancestor, maybe look for her funeral record if you know. Maybe look for a child's funeral record, maybe the spouse's, to see if you can make that connection back. Now, finding funeral home records, I'm going to admit that can be a little difficult, but if you have a death certificate, it'll usually say it on the bottom. If you have an obituary or an article in the newspaper, it might say what funeral home is handling the deceased. So that's an important place to go and look. You can also just check phone books and Google for that time period. If the funeral home is still in business, contact them and email them, and let them know what you're doing. Let them know who you are and what you're looking for and why you're looking for it. You know, they may require a little more information from you before they release that, and maybe not. If the funeral home is no longer existing, check local. I always go to the library first because they kind of can tell me the right place to go. But you're going to find out to see where those records might have gone. They may have been absorbed if they were bought out. They might have been absorbed by the new company or not. Unfortunately, not everybody saves those older ones, so they may or may not have survived in full. So you may end up doing a search and striking gold, or you could end up, as we know, finding out those records were destroyed and no longer exist. But great place to kind of start looking for female records. Now, other places to check for female records could be things such as women's organizations or women's groups. So there could be things such as the Red Cross. They kept fabulous records, guys. So that would be a collection to check. I know in North Carolina, I can find some of those at the state archives. You can also check women's clubs. Those are going to be found probably more in your local historical society, the genealogy society. You might find more of those kinds of things. Now, also, big tip. One of the things I noticed today, and I don't know if you saw it, I posted it earlier on the Facebook page, but Digital NC they've been updating their records lately, and they have this really unique record that they put out there for North Carolina research out of, I think it was, I can't remember which county it was now. It was one of the eastern counties. And it was like a hunting club. It was a little booklet on a hunting club. And I thought, what an interesting out-of-the-box resource. My point here is they also put out this week some more records for Rockingham County and one of the other counties up in that area. My point is, digital collections for the state archives are being updated. Go back and check, because that's where you can find some really unique records for your ancestors, male or female. So I've seen everything from little memory books that have been posted out there, family Bibles that have been posted or updated. A lot of archives have ongoing family Bible projects. So those are really great places to check out. All right, guys, that is about all I had today to share with you. Again, if you have a question or anything, go ahead and drop it in the comment section. I can see those right here on my screen, and I'll be happy to answer them for you. Just stay updated and watching. I've got, as I said, I'll be sharing probably information about my new book probably within the next month, or well, maybe a couple weeks actually. I'm hoping to have it finished fairly soon. So I should be sharing information with you on that. Coming up, Roots Tech is coming up. If you're going to Roots Tech in Salt Lake City in February 2020, then be on the lookout, because I will be doing some like a roll call for those of you from the group who might be going, just so we can make sure I'm getting a chance to meet you guys. And if you guys have questions for me, you can meet me there. I am speaking twice at Roots Tech, And so I would love to have you join me at one of those sessions if you can. And beyond that, I am just looking for those ancestors, guys. Really focusing on my female ancestors. Sarah, as I talked about earlier, really focusing on her, and hoping to eventually have a little bit more information on her that I can share. All right, guys, that's it. Join me next Thursday. We'll have another Facebook Live. Would love for you to join me then. Feel free, guys, go ahead and share this if you want to. Feel free to share it with your other genealogy friends. I would love for you to do that. If you are watching on YouTube, as I said, for the replay, you will find all the links that I put in the comments on Facebook. I will put them in the description below. All right. Have a great day, guys, and I will see you next week. Bye, guys.